Many thanks there, Victor Gali. Inspiring story about hay farming, something we may also consider moving forward. Well, like I told you, we'll be talking about technology today, and we're still having an interesting guest in studio to help us discuss how research and technology have merged in terms of trying to boost access to data and also assist in shaping market research and market trends. And I'm now joined live in studio by Kenfield Griffith, who is the founder of MSurvey. And MSurvey is one of the unique platforms that has been used when it comes to simplifying access to data from hard-to-reach rural communities as well as far-flung societies. Many thanks, Kenfield Griffith, for making time to join us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Let's start off by looking at MSurvey. What's it all about?
So MSurvey is fundamentally shifting the way how surveys are done with a specific focus on emerging markets. So if you look at traditional ways of surveys, it's where competition is pen and paper. It's not scalable. So MSurvey is actually using mobile messaging to reach many. For instance, someone who's the most rural area in a country, right? So opening up the opportunity and access and get feedback on products and services.
Of course, for this to be to actually come to life, there was a need in the market. Just walk us through the journey it took to build MSurvey. I know it's something you're passionate about when back in your days in MIT.
So I mean, I empathize with this whole journey because I actually participated in it. So for instance, when I was doing my research, my PhD research at MIT, I needed data, specifically in the Caribbean and in Kenya, right? And I didn't have access to that data. And data meaning about just simple things as far as do you have access to a bathroom or do you have access to running water? And the most recent data I had or I could have access to with answering these questions were like 7 years old, right? And for me, I thought, how could you make a decision, a life-changing decision on data that's 7 years old? And that was the impetus that drove MSurvey to what it is today. So, giving access to folks to give feedback, whether on a product or service, for businesses to grow, right? And just talking about the growth of SMEs on the continent, the consumer, that's driven by a consumer. So understanding the consumer and getting feedback from the consumer is very important.
So MSurvey has had a good run so far in terms of trying to gain visibility in the market. Perhaps talk to us about the funding you got from the Safaricom Spark Fund and how has it sort of assisted MSurvey to execute its key areas of focus, really?
That's a really good question. So really, fundamentally what we do, we use messaging to communicate. And what we like to say, to create scalable conversations, right? And the best entities to do that are mobile network operators, right? And they're understanding how important the consumer is to drive product and services in these markets. And I think Safaricom realizes that, and the ability to grow MSurvey and offer these services not only to them, but other businesses, they saw a really great opportunity for a partnership. And we appreciate the partnership because, looking at how we're going, the trends of growth in these markets, a telco plays a very important part in that, right? Because the consumer is the driving factor of business in these markets. And having Safaricom on our side, it helps us to grow. Access, giving access to folks with just a simple phone, right? Not only just a smartphone. So you're capturing that whole wide continuum of folk with a simple phone and folks with a smartphone. So Safaricom has a lot to contribute to that.
Interesting. I'm quite passionate myself about research, and remember back in my days in college, gathering data was such a Herculean task, knocking on doors, delivering questionnaires. So how cost effective is MSurvey in terms of just trying to ride on the tech platform and also giving convenience to perhaps researchers and also the academic world?
I enjoy speaking with people who have actually went through that pain. Right? And the pain, as you mentioned, is just, getting the right questions, formulating the questions, creating the paper to the questions, and go out and try to recruit people to answer those questions, then coming back into a database and then try to analyze them.
Yeah.
You're looking at weeks, right? We at MSurvey, we shrink that,
yeah.
right? So now you're getting instant data and feedback to make a decision, right? So if you're looking at cost, we're looking at also value.
Yeah.
Right. What is the value of MSurvey to businesses? Right. When businesses, it's a very competitive market.
Yeah.
You see that the interest rates of banks are going down, capped. Right.
Yeah.
So you're looking at how do you design better products for consumers, right? And that's going to be on understanding the consumer and having conversations with the consumer. And you want to be the first to do that. You want to have the power to do that. And I think that's what we're doing as far as MSurvey.
So looking at MSurvey, what has been the experience like in the African markets? How has been the uptake really?
It's been wonderful. I think for a technology that's designed in Africa, I mean, that was one thing, because the inputs are coming from Africa.
Yeah.
And I think that's important with any technology, as far as understanding the context of who's going to use the technology and what's the purpose, what problem are you solving. And we've seen, I mean, so we have two customers, right? So you have the customer who's using our software, whether you're a bank, insurance company, or telco. And you have the customer who's responding to these surveys.
Yeah.
So by the design, we're making sure that those two interfaces are working and understanding who's behind those interfaces. And I think, based on our really in-depth research and ethnographic approach to this, we are actually solving a problem, and which gives us the ability to scale and grow across the continent.
Interesting that you've brought up issues of scaling up and growing. What's the future like for MSurvey now that already you got funding from Safaricom's PAC fund? What are you eyeing next?
We're eyeing and continue solving this problem. I mean, if you look at access, and I say access to folks, access to consumers, and understanding consumers, and the ability to have a conversation in real time with a consumer, in the most rural place of a country. Right? I mean, that's not just a Kenya problem. It's an emerging market problem, right?
Yeah.
And it's a continent-wide problem. So the ability to actually scale that, to have impact, looking at West Africa, where Nigeria being a large country, if someone to enter Nigeria to get feedback from consumers in real time, I think it will have a huge impact on businesses, right? So I think it's just a decision as far as how do we scale and scale effectively, right, to have impact. And those are the fundamental drivers of why we make decisions. Are we going to a country to actually have impact in that country, or just to say so? I think more so is just to actually have impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps before we wrap it up,
Sure.
Kenphil, I like to ask people about the numbers as well. So you guys started off well. You're also growing as you move along. And how much is MSurvey currently worth in the market? And what are your projections in terms of more business in future?
That's a wonderful question we always try to answer, right? And I think we're challenged with answering that question. And I'll tell you why. Because we're creating a brand new market, right? We're looking at our competition, which is pen and paper, right? And we're scaling that. So looking at what the possibility could be is probably bigger than what we can actually say it is, right? Because we're saying that for even, not just a big business, for a small business who never had access to their customer, we're giving that, we're enabling that.
Yeah.
So you can actually multiply those small businesses.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the multiple effect, right? Looking at how many businesses we're actually having impact and scaling that. And it's a hard number.
Are there live examples in Kenya?
I mean, I think look at Java, for instance, right? Java is known as an SME, right? Java is our customer. Looking at, Java is rolling out a new location every week, right?
Yeah.
We are the central of that operations, understanding with the consumers and what the customer is saying. Java is very, very customer focused, right? And creating that consistency across your locations, whether you're going to the Java at Junction versus a Java at a Prestige, right? They want to create that consistency so you have the same experience when you go to each Java.
Awesome.
So I think that's the power that we're trying to drive with businesses.
Of course, you've not told me the numbers, but finally, what's that one challenge you foresee that will affect this particular kind of technology in the market?
I think behavior. Behavior change, right? If you have an immediate behavior change shift, it's going to affect, right? But I think looking at the trend of how people are looking very haptic, right? In the sense, when I say haptic, you have a few different ways of interacting with technology.
Yeah.
You're a consumer, or you are, you're tapping away at something,
Yeah.
right? So messaging has been a really good sign of behavior and the trend, right? So we're looking at mapping that trend for our technology. If suddenly you have a behavior shift like that, that obviously will affect our technology, but we're also looking at that as well. That informs, what the next steps are. So I think behavior is like the key component.
All right. Many thanks there. We're speaking to Kenfield Grith, who is the founder of MSurvey. Many thanks
Thank
for
you so
making
much.
time.
Thank you so much.